So what we want is sustainable seafood produced by responsible fishermen and also growers. For fishermen, this means following regulations that control overfishing and environmental impacts. For farmers, it's primarily controlling environmental impacts because there are no controls or government controls on how much you can produce. John Finger's Hog Island Oyster Company is a prime example of aquaculture operations that are completely dependent on maintaining good quality of the water in order to produce their shellfish. And now let's find out more from the panel. So I'm going to ask questions of the group in sequence, and I'll ask questions of Brooks first. So Brooks, can you tell us a little bit about the primary source of fish that is sold at the Honolulu Fish Auction?
Yeah, the majority of our fish really are the pelagic or open ocean species. And this basically is, you're speaking about the tunas, the big-eye tuna, in particular the yellowfin, the marlins, opa, manchong, and other species, mahi-mahi as an example. And the primary source is really our longline fishing industry. This is the commercial longline fleet that brings in anywhere from about 25 million to about 30 million pounds of fish through the auction every year. And we do not sell imported species or fish.
What about any farm-raised fish?
We do occasionally sell farm-raised fish in support of our local farmers, but that's on a rare occasion. For the most part, it's pretty much wild fish.
Okay. And then how does the fish auction work with the local fishermen to help them become or be responsible operators?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, fishing today is no longer the same. It's not just a matter of going out and catching fish and bringing it back and selling it. We have to be far more responsible. So as an example, as first receivers of these fish, we've got to be responsible and make sure that these fish are wholesome for sale and consumption. And all of this is based on science. So from the get-go, in terms of food safety, in terms of managing our efforts, all along the way, we are producing data and information, working together with our government organizations and the scientists to make sure that we're doing things the right way for the right reasons.
So could you expand on that a little bit? How do you, what government agencies you were talking about?
Well, to begin with, the FDA for food safety. So again, as first receivers, we make sure that it's fit for sale and consumption. We also work with the National Marine Fisheries Service and the state of Hawaii. So as an example, all our daily market sales data is channeled into the state and the federal government system. So it's an active exchange of information. We also gather data with the fishing vessels and provide that to the government programs as well. So documenting all our information, there's an issue with respect to transparency and tracking of product. I can assure you that our system here in Hawaii has, since its inception, has always addressed those concerns. So we know when the boat and where the boat is fishing, when it sets line, when it comes back, when we sell the fish, and who we sell it to, and price and everything else. So all this data is collected and put together and analyzed by a number of different scientists and government people.
So what you're saying is we have a full accounting of the fish harvest, how much the catch is, and we're able to accurately fish within our quotas and control overfishing.
By all means. It really starts with a commitment on the part of our government. And with this, you have the ability to develop rules and regulations. So the science is important. The science then is passed on to the regulators, who then determine what the rules and regulations are. And then within the system itself, the U.S. Coast Guard, Customs and Border Patrol, all of these organizations play a significant role in making sure that we're doing things the right way for the right reasons.
So do you think that that's a distinction that we are able to accurately count fish and weigh fish and control overfishing against other fisheries that are fishing operations that are out in the Pacific here?
Well, excuse me. I think there's this issue of illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing. That's a big issue today. If you think about it, any system that produces a lot of product needs a significant processing as a part of this. And so how do you afford to do this? Unless governments are committed, unless we as people choose to be responsible, we cannot make this change. And so it's important for all of us to play a role in this. And again, I think if you follow the numbers, the money, you'll find that America is doing things the right way for the right reasons. And it's because of the stringent manner in which we're being managed.
Okay, so I think we're down to a last question for you for now. So how important is sustainable Hawaii fisheries to your business? To you and your business personally?
Well, I think it's important not just to our business, but to our people here in Hawaii. We're an island state, only island state in a nation. It's always seemed to me that, you know, for people like myself and Guy and Dean Okimoto, farmers, we need to be more sustainable. We need to be more self-sufficient. And that means that we need to be very, very careful about how we do things and the extent to which we utilize our resources. So sustainability in this business to me means that it's a perpetuation of family, communities, lifestyles, diets, and it's part of our culture here in Hawaii. So I think this is very important to remember.
And one thing that I will mention is that in our effort to become more self-sufficient in food production, we do a pretty good job of producing about 25%, 30% of the fish or seafood that's eaten in the state here is actually produced here, which is pretty good. What I was saying earlier is across the United States, that's only that's less than 10% is produced by Americans. The other thing that's important to Hawaii to note is that as much as we are stressing agriculture development and agriculture and farming, land-based farming, that wild capture fisheries, harvest fisheries are the highest value food producing system that we have here in Hawaii by far. And it was, in fact, the longline fishery that was mentioned, this is our primary fish that we eat, was worth over $100 million dockside 2 years ago. Okay.
So here's I'd like to share this with you before and it's as we speak, I don't know if you realize that 95 to 98% of the seafood America consumes today is imported, and most of that is cultured. Now for Hawaii, maybe we import about 70,000. I mean, it's much less, and the 70%, and the reason for that is because of this fleet that we have. We do appreciate what this longline fleet does for us.
That's great. Thank you, Brooks. I'm going to switch over and start talking to or ask questions of Guy Tamashiro. So Guy, can you please tell us a little bit about the types of and sources of seafood that you have available at the Tamashiro Market?
Okay, we pride ourselves on having good quality and a great selection. If at all possible, we want to get it live, you know, like live Maine lobsters, live Samoan crab, live Dungeness crab, live blue crab, live island taco, live Hawaiian prawns. But we also have to count, well, actually, we also look at getting fresh if at all possible. Sometimes live is not possible. We want to do fresh. Like recently, we started getting fresh scallops from the East Coast, fresh scallops from Hokkaido. Last year, we just started some fresh soft shell crab, and some of them, when they actually came in, were actually still wiggling, so that was kind of great. Last week, we were offered some fresh tenderized abalone steaks. So we brought a few in. I bought some. Wasn't feeling too well, and they went in my freezer. So I got to try that later. But we tried different things, and wild and cultured. Wild, I prefer wild shrimp because of the taste and texture. But farm fish, oh, that's a necessity. You have farm fish that tend to be fatty, like Atlantic salmon. You have bluefin ahi, hamachi. The New Zealand king salmon is amazing, the amount of fat content in that. And that's one of the beauty about seafood. You know, not too many foods that that taste really good are good for you. And that's because of the omega-3s and the fatty parts of the fish.
It's making me hungry. Okay, so I got to ask you a question about your customers.
Mm-hmm.
So, in your opinion, what's going through the minds of in the heads of your customers when they're making a decision on what to buy?
Well, I think most of them come in with a preconceived notion of what they want to get. You know, like whether it's a bluefin ahi or akule or akupoke, or, you know, they kind of have certain things they look for. But then there are others that, hey, let's go see what the catch of the day is. What's a good deal? You know, hey, akule is a good price today. Let's get some akule. You know, so each customer has their own thing that they come in for, and you know, it's good to have an open mind. You know, see what's available that day. You know.
Mm-hmm. So you're right back to hunting in the market for the best deal.
Yep, that's my job.
So I got to ask you, do you think that your customers are thinking about the sustainability of the product?
The question doesn't come up very often, but I think for a lot of them, you know, it is in the back of their mind because, you know, they want not just to eat it now. They don't want to be hurting the resource, and I think they want it for their future generations. So I think it is in the back of their minds.
But then again, I'm frequently asked about recommending a reputable seafood dealer. I always tease Guy, but I always send them over to Tamashiro Market.
Good choice.
So bottom line is your customers trust you to do the right thing, right? I mean, we're getting to the point of restaurants, stores. People expect them to have done the right thing and done responsible sourcing of good quality but sustainable products. That's expected. Not sure if it's happening all the time. Okay. So what kind of information do you provide to your customers to help them know about the fish in the retail case?
Okay, well, the country of origin, if it's not from the United States, and sometimes we have, you know, helpful hints, you know, like say for the king crab, how long to boil it, you know, or like the Hokkaido scallops. If you're going to eat it raw, we found that just by playing around with it, you just add a little bit of salt, and it brings out the sweetness even more. So, you know, just little hints here and there, or information, for example, about our Ora King salmon, which is a New Zealand king salmon, and how an outstanding job that they do. I mean, I think they said it's like 90-something% water, as opposed to a few percent of fish. And my supplier, I was talking to him last week, and he said, "Yep, I went to the farm." And he looked in the water and says, "Where's the fish?" You know, and it just shows how good a job that they do. No overcrowding.
We're taking our timing cues. We got to move on so we can get to other questions. So I'm going to direct some questions to Ron. So Ron, I understand that tilapia is now one of the top three of type of seafood eaten in the United States market. You think that's the same for Hawaii?
We're getting there, but we have a ways to go. Looking at first at the U.S. mainland, it's been a steady climb. You know, 20, 30 years ago, tilapia was unknown on the mainland, and we were the ones that knew it. But it's steadily come up, and now is the top white-fleshed seafood consumed in America, behind, with the top two being shrimp and salmon. Locally, it's a harder sell. My wife and I began doing tilapia in the mid-'80s in Punaluu Valley, and ultimately moving to the North Shore. And for the first 20, 25 years, we focused on live sales to Chinatown, primarily to the Filipino population that was familiar with the fish and appreciated quality and freshness. So the market was for live fish. In 2009, we collaborated with Chef Alan Wong and his team and began really trying to ramp up the image of tilapia. I mean, first we had to prove the quality of tilapia through a series of taste tests, initially at the the annual Hawaii Farm Fair, and against wild-caught mahi-mahi, and we did well there for, I think, 3 years, and then we started doing taste tests at Alan's restaurant in the Farmer Series dinners. And so little by little, I think we have made inroads into the perception that tilapia is simply an alawai fish. It's like any fish, it's what it eats and where it grows, and how you care for it. For the past, last year, we began also selling fish to 53 by the Sea with Chef Josh, and so that is going well, and we just hope to keep focusing on quality and getting that reputation change in place. We won't make the top 3, but I think my goal is to get to the top 5.
Here. So I've heard very positive things about your variety, your brand of tilapia. What makes your tilapia different from tilapia commonly found in the American market?
The majority of the tilapia that come in the American market right now are from China, but also Indonesia. And on the east coast of the U.S., they bring in, like through the port of Miami, from Central and South America. The fish in China primarily are intensely cultured in earthen ponds. In Indonesia, it's more cage culture, but again, very intensely cultured. And there are less strict regulations on the use of antibiotics and other treatments. We made a commitment 30 years ago not to use antibiotics on our farm or hormones or anything else. We are fortunate to have a spring-fed water source, and we raise the fish in floating cages in 50 to 100 feet of water with the fish in the top 4 feet. So they've never seen mud. They don't know what mud is or tastes like. And then we invest in the best feed we can buy. And by having good feed, we ensure the health without having to go the route of antibiotics.
So the food and the water ends up being a better, and the variety that you have is a better product. So well, thank you very much for those questions. I'm going to, open it to the public for a couple, or to the group for a couple questions? You have a hand up right there.
Sorry, once again, just to the point of the quality. The water leads to a better product. I grew up on Long Island myself. I was fishing, eeling, crabbing, clamming out in the bay. They just started a project a few years ago of reseeding Jamaica Bay, which is a massive national park, actually. And that is actually the shellfish are, of course, now cleaning the bay just as they used to. And that will, of course, lead to not only better water, but a better product for you guys as well. So can't go wrong with shellfish, right?
Yeah. I don't think this is working, but I think I could talk loud enough. That's called the Billion Oyster Project.
Right.
I'll be back there. They have an annual big feast. I'll go back next month. They're doing a great job there because, again, it's not just you need clean water. The shellfish, what I love about it is shellfish are part of a well-functioning estuary. You don't, if there's not enough filter feeders in a bay, you can have problems as well. So I think a lot of people are discovering that, especially on the East Coast where a lot of populations have been devastated over years, like in Chesapeake Bay and in New York Harbor. So great book called The Big Oyster if you want to read about the history of oysters in New York Harbor. So
That was a good one. Any other questions out there?
I have
There's
a
one.
question. You didn't mention the aquaculture that's grown out on Kona as a percentage of your. What is the role of that kind of farmed fish? They
Anyone
kampachi,
are you talking about?
octopus. They grow kampachi, octopus, I just ate some shrimp that Times Supermarket was selling for $7.99 a pound. It was delicious. It's raised right with the deep water. Do you know anything about that?
There's also 2 oyster hatcheries out there as well. You're talking about the Nela site out on.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
so
I don't know the name of that place.
Yeah, there's
It's such a broad question, but there's a variety of different aquaculture operations that are there at Keohole at the Nelha facility, and then some commercially, and they are the kampachi that you mentioned is grown in offshore cages, but they're still within state waters, I believe. I think we're still having issues with permitting offshore in federal water. So hopefully we can get some relief on that and work those things out so that we can start growing in the open ocean also.
I understand that some of the concerns about farm-raised fish have to deal with the food that they're fed. That there are issues with certain kind of foods and then not issues with more natural foods. Some of the foods is processed. And so I'd like to hear comments about the different food types that might be best to use and the types maybe to avoid if you're going to be eating farm-raised fish.
Do you guys want to take that?
Most of the aquaculture feed mills in the U.S. and some of the major producers overseas are constantly improving the feeds. The challenge is to get the right protein levels at a price that produces a fish that's both healthy and affordable. There's constant movement towards addressing those concerns. I think some of the major players like Cargill and Purina, EWOS from the Netherlands, are actively proceeding in that. We're looking at algae as a source of proteins. We're looking at using the fish cleaning the uneaten part of the fish, like from Tamashiro's, converting that into feed for fish. This is a worldwide effort to address this because we have to solve this in order to grow more seafood, and it's just figuring out the best way to do it. So it's a constant progression of science working with industry to move forward.
I think we have time for one more question.
Mahalo for your guys' presentation this evening. It's been excellent, the facts that you've provided. My question was with regard to the auction that takes place. There was a specific mention that farm-raised fish were not part of the auction stuff. And I'm just trying to figure out how it is that we can bring farm-raised fish into that same scenery to allow for that same kind of competition. Or is it that if you're doing farm-raised, you have to go out and sort of find your own market?
Well, for the auction, the thing is that it really depends on how much product that we're talking about as well. And so for me, or for us really, we look at what's in the best interest of the grower. And if it's not necessarily in the best interest of the grower to come through the auction system, because you pay a 10%, you pay us 10% for selling your product. So in many cases, there have been situations where I've suggested the grower go straight to like a retailer like Guy, because it's in their best interest, collective best interest, I think, in terms of the success factor and all of that, and freshness of the product and that sort of thing. So it's not that we wouldn't do that. It's, I think, in the best interest of the grower, I think it's important to look at what the basic economics and stuff are.
Thanks, Brooks. Let me jump in here because I think the example is right here with John Finger from Hog Island. He's a grower and he sells it directly to the public through his restaurants. So that is called vertical integration. He's not going to send his product all the way out to into the seafood distribution market. And so I think the same thing goes even for Ron. Ron has a special product. He's a farmer, and I got to say, I'm imagining he's got some time, but to go market his fish and get the best price for it. So I think that's probably the best reason, or the most reason why it's aquaculture fish not going through the auction. And then fishermen is the opposite, right? They're fishing all day, or all day for days and days and days. The last thing you want to do is come back and try to sell that fish.
I want to thank the panel. You know, in addition to being the executive director of the Hawaii Agricultural Foundation, I'm also timekeeper because I've known these guys for a really long time and they can talk about fish forever. And my job is to keep us all on track. So anyway, thank you again for being here. Please give our speakers one more round of applause. Appreciate them coming out. We have the eating and drinking portion now, and it's on the 5th floor of the swell bar. Our lineup of chefs are David Lukela from Alohilani Resort, and he has actually shucked about 500 oysters, 1,000 oysters for you. 1,000 oysters for you. Tonight we have oysters from Hog Island Oyster, as well as oysters from Kualoa Ranch, and I saw John Morgan here. So thank you for donating those oysters. And I also have to say a mahalo to Tropics Fish and Roy's Restaurants because it took a lot for us to get the oysters flown here. So thank you. We also have Joshua Getz from 53 by the Sea, Jake Saito from Strip Steak, and Bao Tran from Mi Alameda Cantina and the Street Food Hall by Michael Mina. Last but not least, I have to thank our Eat, Think, Drink, Beverage, Cup, and Plateware sponsors, Fiji Water, Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, Anheuser-Busch, Tossware, and Viterra. We hope you stay connected and continue the conversation about what you learned this evening. I want to put in one more plug for another event that we have coming up, and it's a sister organization that I run called Hawaii Food and Wine Festival. We have more than 100 chefs, winemakers, and mixologists coming in October, but we have our launch at the Kahala Resort and at KCC Kaikena. We are featuring different chefs, and our culinary hero this year is Chef Rick Bayless, who was the first Top Chef Master winner, as well as a 7-time James Beard Award winner. So I hope you can join us. Our tickets are on sale at hawaiifoodandwinefestival.com. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoy the rest of the evening.